This is Leah Katz with Transportation Management and Design. I'm here with Russ, Chisholm. We are the consultant team hired by RTS to do the Reimagine RTS project, and we're here to present the draft system recommendations. What we'll cover today is an overview of where we are in the project process. Then we'll do a recap of the project context, the feedback that we received during phase 1, and the plan guiding principles. Then we'll move into the draft recommendations, start with our mobility toolkit, and then our actual draft network recommendations. Finally, we'll finish with our outreach opportunities for you to provide feedback on the draft recommendations. Here are our project timeline and process. So we started in phase 1 by talking with the community, stakeholders, and staff to understand the challenges and priorities within the Monroe County area for transit, and this helped us set goals for the system. Next, we moved into data analysis and looked at what types of service would make sense for the region, and then where we are today, which is our draft recommendations. So based on all of our data analysis and community outreach, we've come up with what we think is a good draft plan for the area. So some context for draft recommendations. Over the last decade, investments in the system haven't been able to keep up with the growing needs and expectations of the community. RTS has worked very hard to meet those needs and demands, but this has put a lot of stress on the system. So at this time, there's a need for RTS to really focus its service. And that's what these recommendations do, and they help bring the system into alignment with current funding levels. So a recap of what we heard from the public and stakeholders during phase 1 about what they wanted to see from a reimagined RTS system. So the main things we heard were more frequency and faster, more direct service. So people really just want to be able to get where they're going as quickly and easily as possible. Also, shorter waits were high on the list, and that goes hand in hand with frequency. Connections to jobs, additional service hours were all key points that we wanted to hit with our draft recommendations. So, what we heard from the public in conjunction with our data analysis led us to these guiding principles. So starting at the top of the circle, we have maximize ridership, and this really ensures that the system is being both effective and efficient. Next, enhancing the customer experience. So things like reducing wait times and reducing travel times for customers. Then ensuring system sustainability, both today and for the future. Public transit to include more mobility options, so really expanding the tools available to us as we think about draft recommendations for the area. And finally, coordinating with community initiatives, so making sure RTS and local municipalities are collaborating and working together to achieve regional goals. So now into our draft recommendations. We'll start with our mobility toolkit, which is really our different tiers of service that are being proposed as part of these draft recommendations. So first, we have our frequent tier. So this tier of service would have a span from 5 a.m. to midnight on weekdays and 6 a.m. to midnight on weekends. It was a 15-minute service from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. So this is a new tier, new 15-minute service, and this is really aimed at the system heavy hitters, the routes that are very productive, that have very high ridership. Really wanting to make sure that we provide the best customer experience to the most amount of customers that we can with these frequent routes. Our next tier is our local tier. This has the same service spans as our frequent tier, has between 30 and 60-minute frequency with 30-minute frequency between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. So a lot of routes will see a frequency improvement within this tier as well. Even if they're not in the frequent tier, they will be getting frequency improvements by moving everything up to a 30-minute frequency. And this is really routes that are meant to provide neighborhood circulation and connect customers into the frequent transit network. And then finally, we have our community mobility zone tier. And this is really for areas where RTS wants to continue to provide service, but fixed route transit hasn't been performing well from either the customer perspective or the agency perspective. So really looking at new solutions that are out there, leveraging some of the new technology options, and this could look a lot of different ways, but these are really tailored to specific market demand. here we have our proposed draft network. Our key components, we have focused service area that will be very efficient and effective, a new frequent network, more simplified local service, so it's easier to understand for customers, and new crosstown connections that will allow people to move around the region without necessarily having to go downtown. So as we see on the map here, our frequent tier are those routes in orange. Then we have our local tier in blue, and our community mobility zones are the green dots that you see. And now I will go through each of the tiers individually. With our frequent tier, this is really probably the biggest improvement that we'll see in these draft recommendations. We have this new frequent tier that includes 10 routes that will have 15-minute service or better, compared to today where we don't have any routes that are running 15-minute service or better. So this is a really big improvement in the customer experience within these recommendations. Next, we have our local tier. As you can see here on the map, we have two new crosstown routes that are proposed, one along Ridge Road and then a Culver Road, which provide customers with the opportunity to move around the region and around the system without necessarily having to go to the downtown transit center. So this will really open up mobility options for many customers. And all of the routes that you see here have been simplified from versions that exist today. Patterns have been reduced, so it just makes an overall easier to understand system for customers. Next, we have our community mobility zones. We've identified 6 of them, as you can see there on the map and in the table. So there are areas where fixed route transit isn't working particularly well, and we think that there's an opportunity to leverage some of the new mobility options and services that are out there that would provide more cost-effective mobility from the agency perspective, and also would provide customers with a better experience because these would be more tailored solutions to specific market demands. So remember, these are not just TNCs like Uber and Lyft. There's a lot of options out there, car share and bike share, peer-to-peer car sharing, van pools, employer shuttles. So there's a lot of different solutions available, and these would each individually be tailored to the needs of these communities. So those are currently in the unfunded portion of the plan, but one of the key next steps that RTS is taking is a mobility management study where they'll be doing a deeper dive into the options that are available for these areas, and then also looking at what RTS's role should be in these areas as a mobility manager, as a mobility provider, and how best to structure those to maximize efficiency for them and as well the customer experience. So with that, I will turn it over to Russ.
Thank you. Post-network, the draft network includes 10 frequent routes, the simplified local service, 2 new crosstown connections, and the 6 mobility zones. Let's talk a little bit about what the potential impacts are of the draft plan. One of the key impacts that we've discussed is the introduction of a new frequent network with service running every 15 minutes and providing daytime coverage on weekdays. Key here is that moving to 15-minute service allows customers to travel when they want, as opposed to orienting their travel around RTS service availability. So it's really kind of a change in how people can use the system. And as you can see here, currently there is no 15-minute service. The good news is the plan will bring this 15-minute service to 64% of the existing customers. 3% of the people living in Monroe County will have access to it, and it will provide access to 33% of the jobs in the county as part of the proposed frequent route. The benefit, and again, we're kind of linking this back to what the customers wanted. They talked about being able to get where they want to go more quickly and more directly. So just looking at some of the travel time improvements that will happen, part of this is new crosstown connections. Part of it's streamlined routes, where the routes tend to stay on the major corridors so you can travel more quickly. And what you see here on the slide is you see top row are the existing travel time windows, and the bottom row are the proposed windows. And the purple color is 15 minutes. How far can you go at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? How far can you go in green every 30 minutes? 45 is kind of a lighter blue, and 60 is the orange. And you can see the shapes change a bit with the proposal, but you can see that generally you can get a lot further in key parts of the system with the proposed plan. And the locations are MC, Quite Plaza, Greece. And you can see how those movements provide opportunities to travel further in the system under the new plan. Let's talk customer impacts. We've talked about a lot of the good things that'll happen in travel time and new frequent service. One of the key goals in developing the new plan was to minimize impacts on today's customers. And what you can see in the map on the right, those lots are people that fall outside of walking distance, a 10-minute walk to the proposed network. Approximately 5% of today's customer trips would be impacted by the new plan. Now, do not include the impact of the community mobility zones as we look to introducing new creative mobility options where fixed route has not been effective. That could drop this number significantly. And one of the things will offer comments on the draft plan that in fact they're one of these dots that are outside of the proposed network. If in commenting, if they could provide some insight in terms of how they use the system, that would be very helpful, being able to home in on the most effective mobility options in these zones. And with the service are some capital improvements. One is connection hubs. Historically, everyone comes to the downtown transit center to use the network. This is proposing new opportunities, both through the crosstown services, but also some key network points where people can connect between the bus transit, but also where they'll be able to connect between the fixed route network and some of the community mobility options. What you can see here on the map is where you see the blue dots are proposed hubs throughout the system, and you see the blue lines are the proposed networks. So you can see that, you know, the central one downtown is the existing opportunity. You see there'll be a lot of new options for people to travel throughout the system without having to come downtown. The second part of the capital plan is historically we run buses up and down the street. What can we do to enhance that experience for customers and to make transit work better? One transit priority along key corridors. Transit signal priority allows the buses to have shorter wait times by making minor adjustments in the green signals to reduce delay on the bus. Q-jumps and bypass lanes. Q-jumps are where the bus gets a lane to kind of slide up the side of traffic congestion, and that actually gets a special signal so that it gets to go ahead of all the cars. Bypass lanes are part of that as well, where the bus has its own short lane to bypass traffic congestion. Part of this is enhanced stops. From a customer standpoint, what kinds of things that can make for a much better experience waiting for the bus? Real-time arrival information, level boarding platforms. You'll see one of those on the bottom right here on the slide. And security features such as cameras and lighting. And then last is enhanced buses. Moving for the program of branded electric buses maintaining the local buses in combination with the level boarding platforms. The goal is to get it so people can just roll on and roll off the vehicles. And then the last thing is continuing with high-capacity buses where we have higher demand. So to summarize the plan maximizes system efficiency with current funding. The rate changes meet the objectives that were outlined in the guiding principles. The frequent network provides for improved mobility to current customers, residents, and employees in Monroe County. The crosstown routes and the community connection hubs will reduce customer travel times and greatly simplify the local service so it's easier to understand and navigate from a customer standpoint. In terms of your opportunities to provide input, you can see we have a number of different venues where you can provide your input. Your input is very important. RTS has not made a decision on what the new transit system in Monroe County should look like, and we'll need your help in moving this forward. We've shared with you the draft of the network recommendations, and now RTS wants to hear from you. You can learn more on MyRTS, that's lowercase my capital RTS.com/reimagine. Just give them a call at 585-288-1700. That's 585-288-1700. And share your thoughts by taking a brief survey online, over the phone, or by visiting one of the many events and around town. Sign language interpreters will be available at all planned events. All of your thoughts, suggestions, and comments that are given will be considered by the project team and will be considered as part of the final plan to be presented to the board in August of 2018. Please share your comments. Thank you.
Perfect. Good job.